Good morning, Madam Chairman and committee. So we have before you House Bill 493. And here we go again. This legislation is to prevent any political subdivisions, and there is a definition for that in the bill. Means any county, city, public health district, school district, special purpose district, or other district or municipality organized under any general or specific law of the state. But it does not include any hospital or healthcare facility. So this is legislation to prohibit any city, state, county political subdivision from mandating mask wearing. This does not limit anyone's ability to wear a mask if that's what they so choose to do for themselves. This is I guess a personal sovereignty bill, freedom bill, health freedom, to make your own decisions, your own health decisions. So there were concerns about I'll give you an example. If there is a government employer who employs painters that go around and paint buildings, office buildings, etc., and they need to wear a mask in order to do their job safely so they're not breathing in fumes, that is exempt from this. So it does say in here, the exemption is strictly limited to those working in roles where face masks are an integral and compulsory safety component of required job duties. So if there's a welder, for example, they have to wear a mask. So that's exempt from this. This really is pointed, as we all know, because this has come before you before and passed, and it has passed overwhelmingly on the House floor as well in previous years. And this year, bringing it back, we have addressed the concerns of the people, and this is a people's bill. This is the people's bill. The people want this, protecting their own, making their own choices. I think that's it. So I'm going to yield the rest of my time over to the great senator from District 13, I believe, Senator Lenny.
Senator Lenny, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Lenny from the great city of Nampa in Canyon County, one of Idaho's shining gems. So trust the science. We heard that for years and years and years. Follow the data, listen to the experts. It feels like just yesterday we were living in the midst of the COVID crisis, and although there were several missteps, I believe, looking back, that most of us were just trying to do the best we could with the information we had. It's kind of our first COVID crisis. But as we sit here today in 2024, it's crystal clear to me, and I think to probably most of us in this room, if we admit it, that much of our COVID response was unscientific, unjustified, and frankly absurd. We saw medical coercion, social distancing, moms being arrested in parks, snipers on the roof of our Central District Health building during a public meeting, and forced masking also topped the list of those absurdities. And under the heavy hand of the CDC and Dr. Anthony Fauci, the science, we were obsessed, and the science, I should say, we were obsessed with forcing not just free-thinking adults, but even toddlers as young as 2 years old to wear face masks. And we all remember those chilling videos of adults forcing crying children to wear masks. In schools, mostly, we saw those. We all lived through it. We're here 4 years back. We're here in 2024 looking back. But, I remember the shaming, the gaslighting, and the paranoia on both sides of every debate that had to do with COVID was almost palpable. It's almost tangible. And although many of us suspected it at the time, new research has now proven what we thought all along, that much of this was pointless, especially the forced masking. I have 3 examples of that. In a congressional hearing just 3 months ago on restoring trust in science in Congress in DC, CDC Director Mandy Cohen evaded questions on whether she would bring back mask mandates. 6 days later, in December 2023, a BMJ journal, medical journal, published a study that found, quote, mask recommendations are not supported by scientific evidence. Third one, the CDC posted a blog 3 weeks ago from today, just 3 weeks ago. The CDC put out a blog warning that the CDC's own scientists got the science wrong when it came to masking. I could go on and on and on, but other people want to testify as well. So I would say that the current body of scientific data does not support masking for protection against disease. That's one point. There's a scientific argument to be made. But the real issue wasn't just that, just the scientific issue. It was the serious harm they did to Idahoans both immediately and over time, which affected our health, our minds, our development, and our community as a whole. And with whispers of a new pandemic stirring, every time you look at the news, there's a new mystery disease in China, there's disease X. They're talking about having another pandemic. Now's the crucial moment to shield Idahoans from the kind of government overreach and, in my opinion, medical tyranny that marked the COVID crisis. Forced masking is not just unscientific, like I said, but I believe it to be a direct assault our fundamental rights to bodily integrity and autonomy that are enshrined in the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So today I stand firm in the conviction that no government official, politician, or bureaucrat has the authority to strip us of this of our inalienable rights. This is not a path we can afford to tread again. Instead, we must ensure that our response to any health crisis respects the dignity, freedom, and well-being of all Idahoans, and it's grounded in genuine science and unwavering respect for individual rights. And I know everyone probably has an opinion, everyone has an opinion on this, and there's other people who are signed up to testify, so I'll just leave it there and stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Lenny. Committee, do we have any questions for Senator Lenny? Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome, Senator Lenny. And either for you or your co-sponsor, so what happens if in school a child comes to school, is coughing and hacking, parents aren't home, they've gone off to work, and the child's okay, but does have a cough and whatnot, and so the school nurse says, okay, well, you can go in the classroom, kind of sit over here, and in a particular place, and please put on a mask, because if you're coughing, I mean, ever since I was a kid, you're not supposed to cough in somebody's face because people think that'll communicate the germs. So this bill would seem to restrict the school nurse or the principal or the teacher from saying, okay, just cover yourself and in that kind of situation.
Senator Lenny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Gannon, it would. Yeah, that's the point of the bill. Yeah, it would.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions, committee? Chairman Crane.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Lenny. To pick up on the line of questioning where Representative Gannon was headed, what do we do, what did parents do, and what did teachers do in a situation before the pandemic in that type of a scenario?
Senator Lenny.
Madam Chair and Chairman Crane, I don't know. I mean, like, to answer the question, I don't think a hacking, coughing, sick kid should be at school in the first place. I think this bill I'm arguing here in that situation is kind of outside of the scope of this, because I homeschool, so I just tell my kids to go to their room. But, you know.
Thank you, Senator Lenny. Any further questions? All right.
I got off easy. Thank you.
So we have a list of folks who have signed up to give testimony on this bill. First up, we'll have, let's see, we've got, which ones are in person, Chairman? Oh, there we go. Okay, let's begin with in-person testimony. David Pettinger, please come forward and state your name and who you represent for the committee. The time is yours.
David Pettinger, District 14. Hopefully we got this mic echo fixed. I would like to make an announcement to Idaho Public Television, because normally this is when they start the blackout screen when I get up to testify. So I think they're taxpayer funded, so if you would note to them to start blacking out now, similar to my health and welfare testimony, now would be a good time. But I do see members of this committee. This is a smart committee. I've seen a lot of members of this committee over the last few years, and I know that this is a bill that you support because I see conservatives on this committee. I see liberty-minded individuals on this committee. I want to take you back in time a little bit to some things that I saw with some individuals that weren't as smart as this committee. I know a lot of members of this committee did not wear masks. There was an incident at the courthouse, the Ada County Courthouse, where under Scott Johnson, then the interim sheriff, and the, I believe it was the Supreme Court orders of Burdick, and then later his follow-up, and also the administrative judge, which I think was Hippler, and they had locked the people out of the courthouse, which everyone here knows is unconstitutional. There was a couple members in front of the courthouse trying to attend their hearing. When they tried to attend their hearing, they weren't allowed into the courthouse because they weren't wearing masks. Because they weren't wearing masks, Judge Manweiler put an order out for their arrest. They were then pulled into the courtroom, pulled into the courthouse without a mask on their face, shackled, walked through the courthouse without a mask on, and then thrown in the Ada County Jail. So I think that this bill should go to the floor. Do pass a recommendation, because that kind of stuff is unnecessary for the people of Idaho. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pettinger. Any questions, committee, for Mr. Pettinger? Okay. Seeing none, our next person up will be Kelly Packer. Kelly, if you'll come forward and state your name and who you represent. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Kelly Packer. I am the Executive Director for the Association of Idaho City, and I stand here in opposition of this bill. I want to first thank all of you for the hard work that you do. I know that you have to struggle through a lot of hard issues on a regular basis. I remember that well. I would ask that you take into consideration that local officials have to do the exact same thing. When we went through the pandemic, none of us had the science that we currently have in front of us. We were simply trying to do the best we could with what we had. It went from 1 week to 1 month to 1 year and longer. And none of us knew throughout that time frame that that would last that long. We simply tried to manage the best we could with what we had. We also didn't know the scientific data at that time. We had a pandemic on our hand, an emergency. And I would ask you not to tie locals' hands in dealing with emergencies that may come in the future. None of us know what they will look like. None of us know what they will entail or what we may need to do to try to keep people safe. We had locals finding themselves in a situation where they had to meet open meeting laws that were passed in this state as well as try to keep people safe. And if you go to most of the city halls in this beautiful state that we live in, there's only maybe 12 to 15 feet total. So you get more than 2 people in there, they could not meet the requirements of the 6 feet setback, and masks were important because none of us knew what we were dealing with. I think also the important point to make here is that locals went through that too, and maybe they didn't make always the best decisions at the time, but they learned from them. They probably will not be quite as reactive this next time, and they will do even better. But again, they need to be able to act in whatever circumstance they may find themselves in, just like you do. And so I would ask you to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Packer, are there any questions? Representative Skog.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Packer, good to see you. I'm familiar with AIC, and you do some great work. Was your board unanimous to oppose this?
Senator, sorry, oh my gosh, Representative Packer. Ms. Packer, my apologies.
No worries, Madam Chair and Representative Skog. The board was yes. Now, whether there's some cities that are not on the board, that feel differently, that could be the case, but our board itself, which represents small and large across the whole state, we have 7 districts from top to bottom, so that we can get representatives from each area, as well as a large and a small from each, and past presidents on the board. All of them were unanimous in opposition to this. Thank you.
Any further questions, committee? Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Packard. Nice to see you again.
Ditto.
My question is, do the Idaho Association of Cities, do they see that it's the city's responsibility for the safety of their citizens or the safety and health of their citizens?
Ms. Packer.
Madam Chair, Representative Scott, both. And they do the best with the information they have at the time, which is exactly what they did during the pandemic. I know there's a lot of high emotions around this. There are on both sides. And I'm not saying that that maybe the state didn't go too far with business closures, with masks, with everything, including at the local level, but we had limited information. We didn't know how long the pandemic would last, all of those things. It's really easy to look backwards and say what we would have done differently. And I'm just asking that in emergency services, locals have the ability to make the decisions they need to make for the health and safety of their communities.
Representative Scott, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Packard. I'm curious if the cities or the Idaho Association of Cities on behalf of the cities do anything else to address health and safety of their citizens when it comes to maybe issues that are more pressing, like heart attack or diabetes. Do they get involved with like stopping sugary drinks and stuff like that? Because those are health and safety issues too. And I'm just wondering what the Idaho Association of Cities promotes for other health and safety issues rather than a cold.
Ms. Packer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Scott. First, the association didn't promote mask mandates. It was a decision made at the local levels. We are just simply promoting, protecting the ability for locals to make those decisions as they need. You have a variety of cities and sizes throughout the state, and they do manage various things. Some will do after-school programs, for example. Some will do mental health programs. Some will, to the extent possible, deal in, maybe work with Alzheimer's or the Heart Association or so forth. Not all cities can do that because most of your smaller cities, which is the largest portion of the cities in Idaho, don't have funds to deal with much more than just streets, water and sewer, parks, and those emergency services basics. Larger cities have additional funds that they can do some additional things, and the association does try to help with additional programming where they can, again, with limited funds. The pandemic was a different situation in that we were reacting to the need to provide open meetings with also an unknown health risk with people coming into those close quarters. So it was a matter of trying to manage a circumstance specific to a city responsibility.
All right. Representative Crane.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Kelly, for being here. What did, like the city of Boise, for example, use as enforcement for not complying with the mask mandate?
Ms. Packer.
Madam Chair and Representative Crane, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I didn't keep track of what all the cities were doing because at that time I wasn't with the association, for one. I came to the association on April 27th of 2020 after the pandemic had started. And it's not something that I tracked, so I couldn't answer that question.
Follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam
Representative
Chair. If I remember right, I think they were going as far as a misdemeanor, which for non-compliance, they were even going to jail time. I remember during that time driving into Boise and being worried that even being in my truck, I might get pulled over and, discuss with an officer or somebody about not wearing one. Do you think that it's important that cities have that kind of authority to throw people in jail if they don't comply with the mask mandate, if Senator Linney is correct and there's another pandemic in the near future? Do you think that's something that they should have the ability to do?
Ms. Packer.
Madam Chair and Representative Crane, to be honest, I do remember that Boise had something on the books about going to jail and so forth, but I don't think it was ever enforced. To be honest, I don't think anybody did go to jail. I don't know that, and so I hate to speak to something that I don't know. That being said, you're talking about 1 out of 200 cities that maybe took something farther than what you would have wanted them to, or that others may have wanted them to. I really would caution this body in making a mandate for all cities who are trying to do their very best because of one. And again, I can't answer to the fact of what actually happened in Boise, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. No further questions. Thanks.
Chairman Crane.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ms. Packer. I think that's one of the concerns that we're dealing with post-pandemic. My city did a decent job managing the crisis. I don't believe there was mask mandates that were required, but there were in Boise, for example. So one of the policy positions that we look at is predictability for citizens as they move across the state. So in the Treasure Valley alone, you have multiple jurisdictions, each city that's handling this differently. So if one is putting a penalty, maybe it's a fine, maybe another one's jail time, maybe another one is, whatever. A citizen, as they drive from city to city, don't know what the penalty is going to be for a violation, or if there is a penalty. So don't you think that there's some validity to our position that there should be, with respect to masks, a policy statewide that creates certainty and predictability for the citizens of Idaho, no matter what jurisdiction they're in? They're in the sovereign state of Idaho, and this is unacceptable no matter what.
Ms. Packer.
Madam Chair and Chairman Crane, I hear what you're saying, but you also have very unique circumstances in each of those areas. Boise is the largest population base in the state. They had more people that they were trying to manage through a pandemic with than many of our cities. So, I mean, that can go both ways, right? And I'm getting texts from people. It looks like, and I just got from the city of Boise, the Boise Police Department tried to focus more on education than anything else, and that the city never sent anyone to jail for the mask situation. So I did get that information from the city of Boise, who's probably watching. And I think that that's truly at the heart of this. Most of your local electeds aren't out to harm their residents by throwing them in jail for a mask mandate, or for trying to or in violation of something that none of us knew how to handle. They're simply trying their best to manage a very chaotic and uncertain circumstance, an emergency. And that's why we're asking that you allow them the tools to do that. Again, I think that you're going to find that the cities have already learned exactly what you're learning as well. And that is that maybe we did go too far in certain circumstances, and we could just make it mandatory in our city halls, right? When people are going to be in close proximity with each other or whatnot. But what I'm asking is allow them to manage the unknowns in the future that they may face when they're the ones responsible for that population in their jurisdiction.
Follow-up?
Certainly. Chairman Crane.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Packer. I understand your position of allowing the cities to manage that. However, the concern that I have sitting on this side of it is that I'm sure they learned from it. But if they have the power to do it again, they can. And I don't know who the mayor will be of X city, and that mayor may see things differently because they weren't in office at that point. And so I think that what we're trying to do is say, hey, here's a baseline. You're not going to tell citizens that they have to mask up and have situations like Mr. Pettinger referenced, where people couldn't even get to court, or they were going to get thrown in jail because they felt like that their rights were being abused or violated. So do you think that from our perspective, do you understand that having a uniform baseline, this is not acceptable, is a decent position for us to be in?
Ms. Packer.
Madam Chair and Chairman Crane, yes and no. I think that your baseline needs to be something different than just completely getting rid of masks as an option. You know, if you want to set a baseline, maybe it's that you can't throw people in jail for certain things, right? Or that you can't make certain things a misdemeanor. But to say that we can't respond with a mask when we have no idea what other diseases may be coming down the pike, I think is also going a step too far.
Representative Gannon.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman, and Ms. Packer. With regard to Representative Scott's question about health and safety in the chambers, hearing chambers at Boise City Hall, I can answer that question if the committee wants me to, because I was present when somebody had a heart attack.
Representative Canna, do you have a question for Ms. Packer?
No, but I can
Okay.
answer. But I can answer Representative Scott's question.
Okay, maybe hang on to that till we have discussion
All right.
on
Okay.
a motion if one is made. Any further questions for Ms. Packer? Representative Alfieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Packer, for coming this morning. This is kind of a multi-layered situation that we're discussing here. So I'm going to throw a couple of things at you. The first thing is, I'm wondering under what constitutional authority you believe that cities have the right to impose a certain type of action on a citizen, such as wearing a mask. Along with that, knowing what we know now about the ineffectiveness of masks as stated by the CDC, as well as many other health authorities, why would we even consider a mask as a possible solution to any type of health crisis?
Ms. Packer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Alfieri. The authority comes constitutionally and in state statute from this body, and I recognize that. And you do have then the authority and the responsibility to oversee certain things. However, just like the federal government to the state, to the counties, to the cities, there's a fine line between finding the right balance of authority between all of those areas and finding a consistent policy that makes sense to implement is your right and should happen, but it's oftentimes hard to find a one-size-fits-all for cities because they are so vastly different. Then to your second question, we're again looking in hindsight, and the CDC's position on mask effectiveness may change as technology changes, as masks get better, as a different disease comes down the pike. We don't know. We're not saying that we want that today for any reason because there's not a threat. What we want is the ability to act when something does happen based on the current science, the current tools, the current recommendations of that time, and in an answer to whatever we might face. When you do something like this, then you remove our ability to act in a way that may be in the best interest at that time, whether it was in the past or not. What we're asking for is for the ability for us to take care of our unique needs in any given circumstance when an emergency may arise.
All right. Committee, any further questions? Ms. Packer, you've certainly accommodated many questions. Thank you
No
so
worries.
much.
Thank you so much, committee.
All right. Committee, next up, we have, there was one more in person, Lee Joe J. in person. Mr. J, please, pardon me.
Lee Joe Lay. Thank you, committee.
Please state your name and.
My name
who
is
you
Lee Joe
represent.
Lay. I'm a founding organizer of the People's Rights Organization, and we started because of COVID and the gross overstep that the governor and all others took in taking the freedom of association, which was basically what the Constitution was written to protect, the freedom of association between one individual and another to interact as they wish to until one other person's rights were violated. So you've heard the saying, my rights end where yours begin. And in COVID, that was all ignored, okay? The Constitution was violated. This body does not have the authority to legislate and ability to mandate such things. And so first off, under the U.S. and the Idaho Constitution, that authority does not exist. For me, you don't have a greater power as a government than you as an individual have, okay? I cannot tell you, put on a mask or blank. I'll put you in jail or whatever. I know several people who were thrown in jail for not wearing masks at the health department hearings and things like that. And, you know, we organized a rather large protest, and Speaker Bedke attempted to restrict the number of people who were allowed to assemble, which was a right in the House, and listen to the session. And this right here is a P100 NIOSH OSHA rated mask. Please give me a few more minutes.
Mr. Lay, you're going to need to wrap up quickly if you've got
I
a
will
sentence
quickly.
to-
This is the only mask, carbon activated filter, that can stop an organic material from being breathed into your body.
Okay, Mr. Lay, we're going to have to wrap up. Committee, do you have any questions for Mr. Lay?
And I can answer any of the questions.
Representative Andrus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr.
Lay.
Would you mind telling me a little bit more about that mask?
Mr. Lay.
Thank you, ma'am. 27 years ago, I was trained on how to use this mask, and it protected me from cyanide gas in a gold mill that I worked at. Okay, I had to wear it around a certain section of it. It stops organic material from coming through the mask with activated carbon. When you wear this mask, it stops all organic material, including viruses, including everything else. I took 14 of this style of mask to St. Al's at the beginning of the pandemic, and several months later took them back because they decided it wasn't in their protocol to wear something that actually worked. The NIOSH rating of an N95 means that particulates, it screens out 95% of particulates, screens out almost no bacteria and absolutely no viruses. So the only effective measure that the government may have been able to take if they were going to mandate something that was effective and followed actual science, which was established 23 years before the pandemic and well beyond that, would have been to mandate and pass out NIOSH P100 masks. And instead, we've got dual and triple masking of an N95 mask. N95 plus N95 plus N95 is not 270. It's still 95, okay? Seeing that the government disposed of their OSHA, the OSHA directives, and went for some randomly, let's call it orchestrated CDC directives, and just got rid of their own, literally their own regulations on masks in hazardous places, and began this, whatever you might call it, this absolute fundamental deprivation of rights, exposed to me that this was not what the, this was all a grasp for power from the individual, and this mask mandate is exactly that.
Mr. Lay, we do want to stay away from impugning motives, but I appreciate your testimony. Is there any other questions for Mr. Lay? All right, seeing none, thank you for joining the committee today. We're going to go to some virtual testimony now, and we're going to start with Ian Trosoyer. Okay, it appears that Ian is not going to be able to join the committee, so we'll proceed with Randy Reichen. Okay, Randy, welcome to the committee. Can you hear us? Randy, you might need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Randy, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you represent. All right, committee, I think it's not going to work there.
Constant how it is.
We'll give him just a few more seconds. Okay, let's try Leslie Manukian. Leslie? Leslie, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you represent, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. My name is Leslie Manukian. I represent Health Freedom Defense Fund, a nationally known nonprofit that seeks to protect our health rights. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. Thank you so much. First of all, I just wanted to say that schools didn't do anything in the past except for have the children go home if they were sick. They didn't mask children. I don't know why we would be thinking that was appropriate today. Secondly, I'd like to say that Haley, the city of Haley, actually threatened, the police chief put out a post on Facebook that he would arrest people who did not comply. So it wasn't just Boise. In addition, I think it's really important that we understand that we have known the science for more than a century. In fact, since 1918, we have known that masks do not stop transmission or infection. This was actually written up in an article in Washington Post, but we knew this because there were cities in San Francisco, in California, San Francisco and others that did have mask mandates and others that didn't in 1918, and there was no difference in outcomes. Washington Post headline was, "We used masks before, they didn't work, what now?" So it's not the case that we didn't know. Secondly, May 2020, CDC published an article or published a paper, their own science showing that masks do not stop transmission of respiratory infections. And yet they led the country down the garden path saying that masks would work. They knew from their own research in May of 2020. If you force masks or if you allow cities to have the opportunity to mask us, you are essentially forcing people to do something not only against their conscience, but something that they know. It's like compelled dress. You're asking them to do something that they know is not appropriate. And I don't think this is something that belongs in a free country. Life carries risk, and each of us has to make our own assessments of how we live our lives.
Leslie, your time is up.
Okay, we can't force medical interventions on people.
Super. Thank you, Leslie. Representative Scott has a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Leslie, you said you're with the Health Freedom Defense Fund, and I'm guessing that's some kind of a law firm. Have you had any cases about masks in your fund, with your defense fund?
Ms. Manukian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Representative Scott. Health Freedom Defense Fund has sued the Biden administration 3 times. We are the organization that stopped the federal travel mask mandate. And the reason that we stopped the federal travel mask mandate was because CDC lacked the statutory authority to mandate masks, but also because there is no science. CDC failed to submit a single randomized controlled trial to the Federal Register in defense of its, or in support of its mandate. Not a single one, because they don't have one. So we have, successfully took that down. There is an abundance of science showing that that masks do not actually work as purported in the community setting, and forcing people to wear these just doesn't make any sense.
Follow up.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Leslie, so is that's yes to the lawsuit? Because I thought I've heard that this Freedom Defense Fund has done something with lawsuits. So I caught maybe one that was successful. Was it successful?
Ms. Manukian.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair. let me say that we defeated the federal travel mask mandate. We, however, failed to defeat a mask mandate in Haley, Idaho. And the judge did not review any of the evidence from our scientists. The judge just deferred to what the CDC said, even though we could prove that the CDC was not being forthright with respect to the science. And the reason is because Idaho code does not protect us on this front. Idaho code needs to be updated in order to ensure that a government cannot overreach and dictate these kinds of policies, whether they are science-based or not. What guarantee do we have going forward that we're not going to see this overreach again, that they're not going to ignore the science that does not support their conclusion? What guarantee do we have of this? We don't have any.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Manukian. Seeing no further questions, thank you for your testimony today. Next up,
Thank you,
we have Garth Gaylord.
The host has actually just.
Garth, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you represent. And the next 2 minutes is yours.
Hi, I'm Garth Gaylord. Just me. And I just want to thank Legislator Gallagher for bringing this mask bill to the legislature. It's finally about time that we get the mask mandate bill going, because the COVID is still in the air. It can get in your hair, it can get in your ears, it can get in your eyes. And so I'd ask Gallagher to actually put a goggle mandate as well, and maybe a helmet, because you don't want to get in your hair, then you touch your hair while you're shampooing and it gets in your mouth. So, and like gloves too, people should have to wear gloves all the time. I'm just, all those legislators, it was alarming that so many legislators just kept meeting during the COVID without masks on, just causing so much danger. I think there should be an investigation into like all the contact tracing information to see how many people were killed by the certain people that didn't wear masks, or that, recklessly just allowed people to breathe air and show their face. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm in favor of this bill, and I was arrested for not wearing a mask many times. I was honestly, they twisted my wrist, slammed my head. I spent 3 weeks in jail for not wearing a mask, and they had a mask mandate in the jail, so they kept me confined to a cell for 3 weeks straight. All because I wouldn't wear a mask. And they constantly harassed me trying to get me to wear a mask. I know many others in Boise that got arrested too. Robert Jones, Eva Selleck.
It looks like your time is up. Does the committee have any questions for Mr. Gaylord? All right. Hey, thank you for your testimony today. And next up, we will have Carlos Vidalis. Mr. Vidalis, welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you represent. The next 2 minutes is yours.
I am trying to unmute myself.
You are unmuted, Mr. Vidalis, so you may proceed.
Thank you very much. My name is Carlos Vidalis. I live here in Boise, and I want to speak in favor of this bill. I made it a hobby of mine back in 2020, in April 2020, to read every mask study that came out. And the scientific conclusion is that masks simply do not work. Whether they are cloth masks, or they are N95 masks, they do not prevent the transmission of respiratory infections. That is the hard data. A study came out from the UK in January of last year that actually summarized 78 studies They're called randomized controlled trials. They all overwhelmingly showed that masks do not work. So why mandate a mask on anybody when they will not do anything? When you mandate masks, you basically are giving people a sense of confidence that the mask will protect them, when in fact it is not protecting them at all. All it is doing is creating, a lot of conflict between people. It is harming, I believe, to mandate masks that do not work, that do not prevent the illness, and cause other social problems. So please, my request is that you pass this bill and that you make it a law that no organization in the state of Idaho can mandate a mask on a person when they do not work. They clearly do not work. Thank you very much. If you have any questions for me, I'm available.
Thank you, Mr. Vidalis. Any further questions, committee? All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony. All right, last up here, that completes our virtual testimony. However, I have a note here that Misty Carlfeld is here and would like to testify in person. So, Misty, if you would like to come forward, state your name and who you represent, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm Misty Carlfeld. I'm with Health Freedom Idaho, and I ask that you do pass this bill. And I'm going to talk about this actually from a religious perspective, and I'd like to remind the committee that there were pastors arrested in Moscow for worshiping outside without a mask on. To wear a mask on my face goes against God and my religious beliefs, and therefore the Constitution. As a Christian, I view the mask as an affront to what I know to be true in the Word of God. Genesis 1:27, Genesis 9:26, and Colossians 3:10 says that I am made in the image and likeness of God. As Job 33:4 states perfectly, quote, "The Spirit of God has made me. The breath of the Almighty gives me life. I will not hide the image of God, nor hinder the breath of life, which is my very connection to my Creator." 1 Corinthians 2:5 says that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. I have faith that I am made perfectly by my Creator with a perfectly designed immune system, as God saw his creation was good. In Genesis 1:3, Romans 1:17 says the righteous live by faith, and Mark 10:52 says that we can experience healing through faith. Therefore, my faith is in the one true Creator God, and not the shifting direction of Dr. Fauci and the CDC. My religious liberty is my birthright and is supported by the Constitution. Therefore, this is actually also a religious freedom bill. What you'll also find on Health Freedom Idaho's website is all of the talking points that we've talked about today. They're not effective. It's actually hazardous to children. There's psychological and social impacts to people, and also the ethical consideration. And one last final thing I'd like to leave with the committee. In our quest to safeguard public health, we must not sacrifice the very principles upon which our society is built: freedom, autonomy, unyielding belief in the inherent dignity of every individual, and religious freedom. Thank you so much, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Carlfeld. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Committee, House Bill 493 is properly before the committee. Representative Crane?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for a motion.
Certainly.
I move that we send House Bill 493 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
All right, committee, we have a motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying.
Madam Chair, to debate the bill for a moment?
Pardon me.
Is
All
that
right.
okay?
That's great.
Great.
Representative Stinson.
This is certainly a personal, and as we've noted here with many of the testimonies, a personal contradiction in many ways. I do rise to debate for the bill, surprisingly, because I do believe in personal choice. The quandary is that our governments can indeed have mandates. We don't smoke in public places. We have to wear shoes. We have to wear shirts, various things to protect the general health. We ask our food workers to, follow certain safety guidelines in terms of service and food. However, the majority of my constituents and the feedback I've gotten are in favor of the bill, so I do have to honor that. And I am for personal choice. And I do hope the sponsors also recognize there are many other personal choices that the legislation that we consider affects. Our personal medical decisions, our personal use of medications or even medical marijuana, a person's right to gender affirm, abortion. They are very emotional and very personal. I will vote for the bill.
Thank you, Representative Stinson. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, we have a motion to send House Bill 493 to the floor with a do pass recommendation. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The vote is unanimous. It will be done. And committee,